Well, welcome everybody. Today, this episode releases on September 11th of 2024, and it marks the 23rd year anniversary since the tragic Tuesday morning that changed our lives forever. We remember the nearly 3,000 innocent lives lost in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. We honor the first responders who rushed into danger, the ordinary citizens who became heroes, and the countless acts of bravery and compassion that followed. In the face of unimaginable loss, we witnessed the strength of the human spirit. We saw a nation come together, global solidarity emerge, and resilience that continues to define us. Today, we not only remember the past, but also recognize the positive changes born from tragedy. Improved emergency responses, stronger communities, and a renewed appreciation for life and unity. As we begin our podcast, let's take a moment of silence to honor those lost and reaffirm our commitment to building a world of peace and understanding. Thank you. Now let's begin our discussion. So Justin, you just had this great idea to say, hey, this one's actually airing on 9/11. Why don't we take a minute to honor those that were impacted, which those certainly that lost their lives, the heroes that emerged, all those things. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea until we begin to try it. And it's like one of those topics that we almost didn't do it because it's like, one, I had to read the introduction like 4 times without crying in it because it brings back a flood of memories and things like that. And then I think the other thing is this, like, what do you talk about after you say something like that? It's just weird, right? I mean, so thanks for the complexity that you have introduced to today's podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. And you're welcome to all you listeners, right? I know it's a heavy conversation. I don't know a person that's over the age of probably 7 that can't immediately think back to where they were and what they were doing in that moment, right? When you found out. So to your point, like, then what do you talk about?
Yeah.
After the fact, other than the awkward staring and silence.
Like this is one of the hardest ones I've ever tried to like. We've got plenty of podcast topics of which none of them made any sense having opened it up like that. So it was easy just to think about scrapping it. But then an idea did emerge because it reminded me of, and I don't know if you watched this. You can go back and plug this into YouTube. But the first Saturday Night Live episode, that the live one that aired after 9/11, it was several weeks later, and Rudy Giuliani was there, and they always do the opening monologue, and so they did this moment of silence. They did this amazingly heartfelt, just introduction of what the weight of the room was actually doing. And then I remember Lorne Michaels. It is Saturday Night Live, right? It's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to like have a lot of stuff. It's like you're not going to jump into that. Lorne Michaels had a brilliant thing. He looked over to Rudy Giuliani and he said, "Can we be funny?" To which Rudy Giuliani said, "Why start now?" and I thought it was a great way to kind of, one, still honor what was going on and just kind of call it out, but also just say, hey, can we do the thing that we do best for the people that tune into us and add value to their lives in that way. And here's what we emerged as a great topic for today: addressing the elephant in the room. Because all of us are going to be in moments where if you don't, you're going to miss out on your ability to do what you do best, and that's increase profitability and quality of life for those that you get the opportunity to serve. And so the elephant in the room, just to think about that, it's actually an English idiom that refers to acknowledging and discussing an obvious problem, difficult situation, things like that people are aware of, but then super reluctant to mention or talk about openly. It's about confronting an issue that's conspicuously present, but it's often ignored due to its uncomfortable or awkward nature. And there's a couple of places, and this is by no means comparing it to September 11th, and we definitely wanted to do, but it does show up, and it does if you're not willing and able to just recognize it, be aware of it, and address it. You're going to miss out on the thing that I believe God called us to do if we were in this business: increase profitability and quality of life. And one really good example of this that we talked about on the show a long time ago was you guys know, if you've been listeners of the show for a while, we've got a very specific process we follow. We usually are introduced to the client from an existing client. So people, most of the time, that's why we want you to take Transforms, because we want you to create a practice that makes asking for referrals irrelevant, because you have so many people knocking on your door that say, hey, I really want to learn more about what you guys do because I have a friend. He told me about this idea. I was like, where'd you get that? And so normally our meetings, our first location phase meeting is very warm. Now it wasn't always that way. And in fact, we're going to give you some things that are real helpful today. If it wasn't always that way, if it's not that way for you right now, but you can build that. So just know that's better long term. But I remember getting a call. So keep in mind, this is my normal process. It's warm meetings. People want to meet with me. They've asked to meet with me. And then we take them through our process. Well, when it's not the case, and I'm not trying to have a regular diet of these anymore, because I lived a long time having to, I get a phone call from a buddy of mine, and he's like, hey, Wes, I got this meeting, and I just want to know, what would you say? What would you bring? And so I'm like, well, tell me about the context of the meeting. He said, well, I know a guy who knows this guy and knows that can got me the phone number for this guy. And this guy was a CEO of a large publicly traded company, very successful founder of the company. And he said, so I called him, and he was kind of mad when I called him. He's like, how'd you get my number? Well, who is this? And finally, after kind of telling him, we do financial planning, and he said, look, call my assistant, and you can meet the last 30 minutes of the day. I meet with all my advisors once a year on one day. You can have the last 30 minutes, bring your best 3 ideas, and don't bring any more than 3 sheets of paper. And so he said, so I did. I got it all set up. I'm going to this meeting, and he said, so what would you say? And I said, I wouldn't go to that meeting. I said, that sounds awful. like, are you kidding me? That guy didn't want to meet with you. In fact, if we think about the levels of influence, you have what we love, which is pursuant influence. That's where people are like knocking on your door. They're intrigued. They want to go and meet with you. Then you have like tolerance, which is like, all right, I'll take the meeting because I like you, type of deal, or maybe there's something good in there, but I'm not really intrigued. I'm just doing it because you've talked me into it. Or I'm like, okay, I know Wes or Justin well enough to go, all right, I'll meet with you. Fine. Then you have resistance. And what we were dealing with this was like, I don't want to meet with you. In fact, I don't even know why I said yes to this, but do this. Right. And here's my filter. So he's like, so what would you say if you were going to go, Wes? And I said, look, you can't just go in and do what he said. You can't just bring your best 3 ideas, because one, what are best? There's hundreds of thousands of combinations of ideas out there. And you don't know enough about him to know like what the best ones would be. You probably have some that are relevant. And 30 minutes, best. I mean, it's just never, it's not going to go well if you do that. Because I don't care how creative you are and the ideas you bring. I said, so here's what you got to do. I said, you need to go in there and say this. And then you say this, and then you do this. And so he hangs up, and then he calls me back about 30 minutes later. He says, you want to come do this meeting with me? And I was like, no. And he said, well, the guy's probably worth $500 million. And I said, all right, I'll come. So it's like, why not? I figure, hey, at least I'll get to see my friend. And I decided we're going to have some fun with this. So we walk in, and here's what we said. Because it is total address the elephant in the room. And there are moments right now that you all have that you can do the same thing. I walked in, I'll make up the guy's name is Bill, I said, Bill, hey, appreciate the time today. Cause hey, by the way, when we approach, let me caveat this with what it was like. We sit in this lobby, we get there early, and we got little name tags on. You're waiting there. The elevator comes down. Before the assistant gets off, the people that were meeting with him before me, they get off, and they look like they'd been beaten up. I'm not kidding. It's like they were yelled at or screamed at. They get off, and she like looks around the corner. She's like, okay, next. And so we go in. It's as bad as you think. We walk in, and it's one of those long conference tables, like the ones that in the movie Christmas Vacation, if you've seen that, where he goes and sees Mr. Shirley, and it's like on the opposite end. Got a gift, Mr. Shirley. and it takes a while for the noise to get down to where Mr. Shirley is. It's like, that's fine. Grease ball, put it over there with the rest, you know. Um, so anyway, it was kind of like that. We walk in, guys, in a pair of cargo shorts, flip flops, and a white just t-shirt. And so anyway, we did get to sit closer to him, so that was good. And I said, "Hey, Bill, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. Listen, and we've done everything you've asked. So today we're going to show you three really good ideas. I didn't say my best, so I just said three really good ideas. And we're not even going to take 30 minutes. We'll be out of here in 15, unless you have questions. We have enough. We have all the time you need. But I understand what today's about. Because the last thing you probably want to be doing right now, as you met with all your advisors all day long, is meet with some people you don't know that you don't believe can help you. You've got everybody in the world with their hand trying to get in your pocket. So you're defensive on that. So you have to have some guardrail around that. So here's what I would ask as we talk about this today is there are hundreds of thousands of great planning ideas, hundreds of thousands of combinations of them. What makes one the best is totally a unique understanding of your situation. So I brought three really good ideas, didn't bring more than 3 sheets of paper. And I'm going to go through those, and they're probably going to be intriguing and probably going to be relevant in some way, shape, or form. Just know there's a lot more where this came from, because today I understand what it's about. Is you need to know, are we competent? And are you intrigued? And do you even want to have any more conversation? So we have enough for you to be able to do that. He didn't change his facial expression 1 ounce. I go through this meeting with him, and by the way, I cheated. I didn't just have 1 sheet of paper. I had him printed out 3 sheets of paper. I had those 3 sheets of paper on my iPad, and so it was really like 12 sheets of paper, because I would zoom into one part. I'd be, let me zoom in so you can see this better on my iPad. And I just talked through these 3 ideas. And at the end, he was very intrigued. He started lightening up. And anyway, I left, and a couple of weeks later, his assistant called us and said, "Well, you blew him away." And I said, well, "I'd hate to see him not blown away. Like, what's he look like then?" And she's like, "No, well, you told him the truth without pissing him off. And you addressed the weight of what that meeting really was." And so I don't know, Justin, and this is going to be a long episode today, but where is the elephant in the room for advisors most of the time? It's going to be meetings like that, and you just need to call it out when it is. It's going to be sometimes you need to call an audible and deviate from your well-established, well accepted process when there's an elephant standing in your way. Because I believe this with all my heart, the reasons your great ideas, products, processes, strategies, they don't get any traction sometimes, it's because you're running around with answers to a question they've not yet asked. So you need to answer that question first. You need to call out what the thing is that's in the room. And just one more real practical thing around that, and then any comments you have, Justin, is like this is exactly why we do our "what do you do" talk the way we do it. Because they're asking a question, what do you do? And what do you give them a title? That's not addressing really anything. Or you try and give this long explanation. Well, why don't you just say back a question that addresses a felt need that they're experiencing, that is an elephant that's in their head that it's not aware of. Like, hey, you know how it's easy to have a lot of your money disappear to the tax system? I do. I do know what that is. I moved from resistant, probably not resistant, you're tolerant of the person because you're asking them the question, to intrigued in the realm of pursuant influence. They're knocking on the door going, I do know that. So I said, well, we help people with things like that. We own a financial planning company, work with business owners, help them identify and pursue profitable financial opportunities. Let me give you an example. And I might tell them about paying your kids, or I might tell them about renting your house for 14 days, whatever it is that makes them go, I'm more intrigued, to then say, I'll tell you what we do is we just ask a lot of questions, figure out where you are, where you're trying to go. Once we understand that, we can have some great conversations in the areas of planning that may be useful to what you're trying to accomplish, and go from there. So whatever their elephant in the room is, I would say address it, and just don't just move forward with your process. Any other closing thoughts on that, Justin?
Yeah, it just kind of makes me think of like my GPS, right? Like my GPS helps me in navigating, because it doesn't worry about my emotional state. That's one thing that we take into account.
Yeah,
That GPS isn't. But it's, hey, you need to take a detour because there's an accident. There's a problem up ahead. Or it's the alternative, right? Like I'm going this way of a normal pathway and I'm defaulting, and it finds a shorter, better route. And it
Yeah.
lets me know it doesn't worry about like my responsiveness, like, no, this is the way I've always done it. Like it just tells me like, hey, there's a shorter, better route you need to be aware of, or that there is something that's up ahead that I need to detour. I just think that it lands on one of our core values of being honest and honoring, right? Like we have the opportunity to have conversations to identify things for people that, to your point, increases profitability and quality of life, but that just other people aren't going to have those conversations that they may not and likely aren't aware of, that if you don't, like they're going to run into that accident or potentially a cliff, right?
Yeah,
The road's completely washed out if you keep going that way. So I think
absolutely.
just challenge yourself with that, and then again, honor of today is just being willing to have those conversations
You bet.
in difficult situations that others won't.
Well, speaking of the elephant in the room, we have a staff meeting to get to, and we're going to be late if we don't close right now. And so I want to thank everybody for listening today. Get out there, address the elephant in the room to help people increase their profitability and quality of life because they're worth it, and you're worth it as well. Have a great day.